What's up, folks? This is Tony Brewer. You're listening to or watching, as the case may be, Cogitations. Cogitations is the podcast where we think about things, we contemplate them, we turn them over in our minds, and then we discuss them. Daniel chapter 7, verse 28, Daniel writes, "Hitherto is the end of the matter. As for me, Daniel, my cogitations much troubled me, my countenance changed in me, but I kept the matter in my heart." And we're not going to keep the matter in our heart. We're going to talk about it. And today we're going to talk about rest and relaxation. I am feeling very wonderful, Diana Harden. We've had this little trip to Prince Edward Island planned with some friends here at the local congregation, and got a really good deal on some cabins that were right on the bay or right on the strait. It's like brackish water. There's not really salt water, but it's not fresh water. And yeah, it was very good. Now, something that's going on that I don't think that I can track from my end is we are streaming on Instagram. Now, we're not going to have anybody watching on Instagram because quite frankly, we don't do a whole lot with Instagram. But if you can stream on it and it's free to do, then quite frankly, that's what we're going to do. Yeah, good for absolutely, Dana Harden. Appreciate that. And yeah, we needed it. I mean, we needed to get away. My wife needed it, especially with all the work that she's been doing, the stress and strain of that particular job with the local work and Anthony and Abigail and the workforce and stuff. It was time. And so again, that's on my mind. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So many times we feel like we're too busy with life to take time away. Glad you got to get some R&R. Absolutely. Pardon me, I don't know what's going on with my throat. But anyway, so yeah, we're streaming on Instagram. I have no idea if we're going to get any people watching or anything like that, but we are. And as long as it's as easy to do as it has been today, then we're probably going to keep streaming on Instagram. So, if you're watching this and you like what we do, be sure and like, subscribe, and share. I'm going to go ahead and put the captions up with the tip jar. And so if you like what we do and you want to send us a monetary donation, go to nearchurches@gmail.com and send us a PayPal, any amount. Or you can go to Patreon, www.christianitynow.com or www.patreon.com/ChristianityNow. And of course, Substack for free, but you can opt to a $5 a month on Substack. There is a verse that I think just wholly encapsulates this idea of rest and relaxation, and that's in Luke chapter 22. And I'm going to, hold on a second. Tearing things up here. All right. Luke 22, and there's kind of it's implicit. Evidently, it was Jesus had a habit of going off a ways with the disciples and kind of checking out. So Luke 22:39 is the actual verse we're looking for. But Luke 22, let's see. Yeah. And he came out and went as he was wont to the Mount of Olives, and his disciples also followed him. And when he was at the place, he said unto them, Pray that ye enter not into temptation. And he was withdrawn from them about a stone's cast, and kneeling down, prayed, saying, Father, if thou be willing, remove this cup from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but thine be done. So let me explain, first off, in the verse. Then accompanied by the disciples, Jesus left the upstairs room and went, as usual, to the Mount of Olives. That's the New Living Translation, the English Standard Version. And he came out and went, as it was his custom, to the Mount of Olives, and the disciples followed him. The Berean Standard Bible, Jesus went out as usual Of course, we read the King James, the New American Standard, and he came out and went as was his habit. So here's the thing. Jesus had a habit of going out and resting. Jesus worked when it was time to work. He rested when it was time to rest. And evidently he had a habit of doing that, which means that is a good thing to emulate. Dreamhouse Production, well, thank you for the note. And Rusty Kirby says, missed you yesterday. And Aaron had a really good podcast of Revelation as well. Yeah, I caught some of it. And well, thank you first off for the well wishes and the claiming that you missed me. I appreciate that. And my saying, yeah, is I agree with you. I do believe Aaron did have a wonderful show. The analytics say it was a wonderful show. So yeah, that's a good deal. We may try to sneak and see if we can have Aaron on maybe by himself more regularly. I'm trying to tell Aaron, man, look, dude, you know, people resonate. People like you. They resonate with your message. They like how you speak. Fishing, Village Fishing. Good to see you. Thank you for the note there. And so, yeah, what we gauge from Luke 22:39 is that it was Jesus's habit to go refresh, recoup, whatever you want to call it. And I tell you the way I conceptualize this. I only have so much bandwidth. So let's say my bandwidth is from 0 to 100. And whenever I have something to do, if I'm uncertain, that takes some bandwidth. If I'm stressed by something else, that takes some bandwidth. If I've got other irons in the fire, that takes some bandwidth. And then somebody comes up with a problem, or they're offended, or they're maybe incensed or something like that, and that takes up some bandwidth. So I had 100 to begin with, and because of all of this other stuff, I am functioning at about a 20 bandwidth instead of a 100. And what do? Well, you're always going to have people coming up that are incensed, offended, fires to put out, all that good stuff. If you're working like you're supposed to work, you're always going to have irons in the fire. You're always going to be a little bit stressed. You're always going to be a little bit anxious. So there's just a certain amount of bandwidth that it takes to live daily life. But you can mitigate. All right. So sometimes the way you mitigate is you got to form your lips. Watch what I do closely with my lips. See that? And then you touch your tongue to the roof of your mouth while making kind of a humming sound like no. See, sometimes you say no because you only have so much bandwidth and you've got stuff you've got to do. So whenever some Yahoo sends out a bunch of messages and wants you to write an article for a book that he's putting together, you might have to say no. Incidentally, I was at Yahoo. I had a couple of people. I've got a couple of articles that I'd like to get written, but the people that I had in mind had to tell me no because they were just too busy, you know. And you deal with that. I can't. I mean, it's not like I'm paying them. If I said, hey, I'll pay you $1,000 now, buddy, that will free up some time. I'll just go ahead and tell you. But I get it. Now, how do you free up some bandwidth if you're already optimized with your irons in the fire, with your stress and anxiety and stuff like that? You just go off and rest. Bring some of that stress down. Blow off some steam, and you'll get some of that bandwidth back. Do I understand correctly? Is Gethsemane part of the Mount of Olives? Is if I remember my biblical geography correctly, the answer is yes. But I think if you're like me, I don't have a very active imagination. So when I think of the Mount of Olives, I think of like one lone mountain peak. And when I think of Gethsemane, I think of one lone mountain peak. When I think of Mount Ararat, I think these are mountains like Mount Olive, Gethsemane, all that. They're in the same mountains, but they're probably two different peaks or hills, as it were. And for anybody fact checking the last 60 seconds of this, Go easy on me. It's been a while since I've looked at Bible geography. But if I'm understanding correctly, Scott, you and I, we are correct if I'm understanding correctly. And if not, I'm open to correction. Somebody probably has a much deeper level of knowledge than I in that particular case. I'm awful jumping. Let me see. This my camera and stuff will go back to the wrong settings sometimes. No, it's at the right settings. I don't know what's going on. Anyway, sometimes you can't afford to take a vacation, but sometimes you can't afford not to. Hey, Alabama, that's absolutely correct. And I would tell you this, that if you're frugal, if you plan and you get a little bit lucky, you can take a pretty cheap vacation. For one, we vacation. What we did here was in the off season. A lot of the touristy stuff wasn't open, but that's okay. We didn't go for that. We wanted to go and we wanted to just check out. We really didn't do anything. We just did it by the ocean, or didn't do it by the ocean, you know. But my bandwidth, maybe if I was setting on a 20 bandwidth whenever we left, which we left right after worship services on Sunday, and we got to the cabin that late that afternoon, and we ate supper together. The next day I woke up, I took Anthony and Abigail about an hour away to a town that had some shops and stuff. And Abigail wanted to go to a yarn shop, and we ate some oysters at a place to get oysters, which were heavenly. Yeah, I did not know how much I liked raw oysters. I could have eaten my body weight in raw oysters, but my point is, we didn't really do anything, and I'm coming back to a 70 out of 100 bandwidth instead of a 20 out of 100. It's really refreshing and good. So I see this pattern of behavior from King Jesus. If that is the only principle, if that's the only place where I would find this principle in the Bible, then it would be enough. But there's more. It sounds like a Billy Mays commercial. It sounds like a Billy Mays commercial, rather, late night. Now, I don't know why I've got a tickle in my throat. Probably because I feel like I cannot cough right now. Pardon me. Now, I've got a few little show notes to walk us down the track here. Let me get into them. All right. Bear with me. I need to. So, think about creation and the Sabbath. Ain't that right? A yarn shop. Imagine that. Yeah. And she ended up buying like an heirloom blanket. She didn't even buy any yarn, I don't think. But she bought her, with her own money, I might add, an heirloom blanket. All right. So we're gonna knock out 4 points real quick. Besides the Luke 22, creation Sabbath, Genesis 1:2. God creates the world in 6 days and rests on the seventh. He sets an example here for humanity to follow. Now, as I've said in the past, I think a lot of times we fight so hard saying that the Sabbath law is no longer applicable to the new covenant that we forget about the Sabbath law principle and how useful the Sabbath law principle is. But anyway, you can go to Exodus 20. Well, I'll just do it in my eSword here. Oops, nope. What am I doing? eSword. eSword. There it is. My computer's acting funny. I believe it's Exodus 20, starting in verse 8. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work. But the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou nor thy son, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the seventh, wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. I don't think there's any problem in the 21st century remembering the Sabbath in a reverential way, as long as we understand that we're not paying homage to the old covenant. Like, look, God set this up as a signpost, if you will. Like, listen, this is not codified into law, but look what I did. Maybe you ought to think about doing it. I had a job of work to do, and once it was finished, I was finished. I walked away. I left it alone. Now, I don't mean God walked away and left humanity alone. Obviously, God is still active in the world today. But what I mean is he's no longer creating. You know, when I first, and I still have a habit of doing it. I don't know what I'm saying. When I first got into sound production, no, I still fall into this trap. And in fact, I did a consult with a professional in the industry that I'm interested in order to get some training. And he told me the thing that I already knew. You've got all this nice equipment. Quit messing with your sound. You've paid all this money to get this nice equipment. Trust it. The people in Austria, the people in Russia, the people in Italy, all the places that make these really nice high-end pieces of equipment, they've done all the research and development. They know what they're doing. Record into that piece of equipment and quit jacking with the end result so much. Because what happens is I fall into this trap where I speak, I record, I lay down the track, I bring it up to levels for a podcast, and then I've got to keep tweaking it, and I tweak it so much that I cause it to be worse off than what it was. And the fact of the matter is, if I could have just rested from my labor and left it alone and walked away, understanding, hey, this is finished, and nothing that I can do in my current state will make it any better than it is now. Folks, there's a great utility in understanding that. And when I look at God's example of the seventh day, he rested, then maybe I need to learn that lesson. Maybe I need to learn to recognize when something is done and leave well enough alone. I need never to let perfection stand in the way of being effective. Hello, Connie Barton. It's good to see you. Sorry, coffee. Let me tell you something. I can affectionately complain about Canada up here, and I can complain about Canada because it is affectionate, okay? But one thing that I cannot do is I cannot deride their coffee. Canada do be having some good coffee. All right. So we got that one point out of the way. Let's go back to another point. Physical and spiritual rejuvenation. Psalm 23, 2 and 3 describes God, this good shepherd, as leading us beside or to the still waters and the green pastures. That's for restoration. Jesus invites us to come to him for rest. Well, in this, we got two passages of scriptures. First off, I'm just going to read the 23rd Psalm. I don't think that's a bad thing to do for this podcast whatsoever. Psalm 23, 6 verses. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table for me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. And I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Folks, what a wonderful passage of scripture. What a wonderful and beautiful poem here given to us from David by inspiration of the Holy Spirit. This is peace. The shepherd understands that the sheep need to take a break. So the sheep are restored. They're found a safe space to bed down. Green grass, soft green grass, palatable and good for the digestion. Still waters, waters that are not dangerous, waters that will not stress the sheep out. Folk, I have here a pattern, a mechanism built into the system. The Good Shepherd allows for the relaxation and rejuvenation and recharging of the sheep. And we know this. If you're a parent and you have raised one child beyond the age of about 12 days, then you know there's only so much a child can handle before they break, before they snap and they start throwing a fit. It doesn't matter how good you are as a parent. If you push your child too far and they push into that breaking point and they go up into that red zone, there's nothing to it but to let them get that out of their system to mitigate any damage bodily to themselves or others and regroup. God doesn't ever want to push us up into that level. We should recognize as adults before we get into that level, and then we should take a step back and be like, you know what? I'm going to go lie down in green pastures. I'm going to be led beside the still waters. Now, Matthew 11:28-30. I'm not going to quote it, although I could. I love this passage of scripture, but I think I quote it wrongly. I don't quote it perfectly, which means I should work on it. But Matthew 11, all the way down. Listen to it. Come unto me, all you that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn of me, for I am meek and lowly in heart, and ye shall find rest unto your souls. For my yoke is easy, my burden is light. Jesus is trying to explain by implication here. Listen, I'm a taskmaster, but I'm not a difficult taskmaster. My yoke is easy, my burden is light. You can have rest for your souls. It is so important that we have rest for our souls. All right. Number next. Proverbs 27:17 warns, in my opinion, against overwork. I think, and I'm going to say especially men, need to be able to go off together and be manly and do mannish things and have fun. Proverbs 27:17, iron sharpens iron, but one man sharpens another. I like the way that's put in the King James. Bear with me. I'm gonna read it. Proverbs 27:17. Iron sharpeneth iron, so a man sharpeneth the countenance of his friend. Folks, it's good that iron sharpens iron. I want my friend to sharpen my countenance. Whenever iron comes into contact with iron, like I wish I had, well, I do. This isn't iron. This is a porcelain rod. This is what's called a honing rod. And a lot of times these rods will be made out of really hard iron. And you take your knife and you just go back and forth over it like this. Now that's not sharpening the blade, it's honing the blade, but it makes it feel sharper because it's honed. And I can do some pretty interesting tricks with my knives whenever they're at their peak sharpness. People, it's odd. Most people aren't used to working with blades that sharp. But just like just like the meeting of those two materials causes the iron, like it affects both of them. You need to get away with your friends and go through that recharging, that rejuvenation. All right. Incidentally, that's a way to avoid burnout. Burnout is when your bandwidth gets down to zero. it is hard to get started once your bandwidth gets down to zero. Trust me, over the years, my bandwidth has gotten down to zero a time or two. All right. We got one more here, which is trusting in God. Yeah, I'm going to do Psalm 37. Almost would be a good one. It's 40 verses. It's a pretty long psalm. I've got verse 7 in my notes. It encourages us to rest in the Lord and trust in his sovereignty. Rest is an act of faith, acknowledging God's control and provision. I'm just going to read the first few verses here. Yeah, always enjoyed the man's retreats at church. Don't know why we quit doing them. Scott, my buddy Tyler Jenkins, he has a brand called Mighty Men. And I was involved with a little bit of it in the beginning, but that's mostly him and another guy's brand. But he is really good at putting on these Mighty Men retreats. And the very first one, the inaugural Mighty Men retreat, I had a big hand in, and we did a lot of things like we cooked an alligator. I slow smoked an alligator. The first time I'd ever done one. Was amazing, and there was all kinds of neat stuff. But that's a yearly event in South Georgia, and if you just look up Mighty Men Retreat or go to Tyler Jenkins and look at his timeline or something, I'm sure he shared stuff from Mighty Men, then you can follow that. And I'm going to tell you, I don't care where you are, travel to South Georgia where they do that Mighty Men retreat every year. Tyler always has a really good retreat, and it's exactly what you need. Like me and my son used to go to it every year back whenever we was in the States and we could, and we always were blessed by it. All right. Fret not thyself because of evildoers, neither be thou envious against the workers of iniquity. For they shall soon be cut down like the grass and wither as a green herb. This is a fellow whose bandwidth is approaching zero. Trust in the Lord and do good, so shalt thou dwell in the land, and verily thou shalt be fed. Delight thyself also in the Lord, and he shall give thee the desires of thine heart. Commit thy way unto the Lord, trust also in him, and he shall bring it to pass. And he shall bring forth thy righteousness and the light, and thy judgment as the noonday. Rest in the Lord, and wait patiently for him. Fret not thyself because of him who prospereth in his way, because of the man who bringeth wicked devices to pass. Cease from anger and forsake wrath. Fret not thyself in any wise to do evil, for evildoers shall be cut off, but those that wait upon the Lord shall inherit the earth. Folks, we have to give certain stuff to God, and it's very difficult to do that while you're in the mix. But if you are going through these hardships and trials, and your bandwidth is dangerously close to zero, even if you can only come away for a few hours, check out. Find a quiet spot to meditate and be alone with your thoughts. You'll have a way to go. Like, God has set these mechanisms for our benefit. So, trusting in God, anywhere we go, no matter where we are located, we can go up into another room by ourselves. In fact, even if we are in a group of people, we can mentally check out, and we can throw all of our cares and worries on the Lord. So, in today's fast, hello, Sutradar, good to see you. So, in today's fast-paced world, rest and relaxation, folks, are absolutely crucial to reduce stress and anxiety, which takes away from that bandwidth, improves mental clarity and focus, which whenever you're not as mentally clear or focused as you should be, it's like trying to work with weights on. Rest and relaxation improve mental clarity and focus. Incidentally, there's an episode on it's called Parks and Recreation, and Leslie Knope had the big idea. I mean, she had a big idea that saved the day. And then the next season, the people in charge, hey, we're ready for your next big idea. Folks, she ain't got one. She don't know what to do. So what she does is she takes all of her team members together. They go on a camping trip, and she thinks that because she's on a camping trip with her team members, that her team members will inspire her to a big idea. But her team members are like, Leslie, look, we're going to go to sleep, and tomorrow morning you tell us what the big idea is, because that's what's going to happen. We're going to come up with ideas, and then you're going to shoot them all down, and we're going to go with the idea that you want. Leslie learned a valuable lesson. Maybe Leslie doesn't need to be a steamroller, because if you have a group of people around you that constantly help you, but you just shoot them down and you only use them as a so-called muse, then you won't have that group of people for very long. But here's what happened. Her boss, Ron Swanson, locked her in a room with no cell phone, no television, no nothing. And he said, Leslie, for the last several years, you've not taken a vacation. You've not done anything. You need to just check out, put your mind at rest, and go to sleep. And then, of course, it fades to black. And the next morning, Ron is at City Hall carving something. And the bosses above Ron are like, well, where's Leslie? And Ron's like, I don't know exactly. Well, what do we do? Do we need to reschedule the meeting? No, she'll be here. Okay. And of course, she comes in, but she's still in her pajamas. She's wrapped in a quilt from being locked in that room. Her hair's all a mess, but she says, here's an idea. And it's a good idea. But then she says, not only that, and her sound kind of fades to where you can't hear her, but you can tell she's rattling off all these really good ideas. And Ron Swanson just smiles, closes up his little jackknife, and says, I'll leave you to it. Because he knew all Leslie needed was to just check out, and it enhanced her creativity, her productivity, her mental clarity, and her focus. And she was able to strengthen her relationships with her community and her coworkers and the people that worked underneath her. Because here's the thing, whenever you're stressed and wound tight, it's hard to build a relationship with anybody. So that's another reason why we need rest and relaxation. And then, unironically, I put this last, but probably it needed to be first. Prioritize self-care and overall well-being. You know that you are absolutely of no use to anyone if you can't take care of yourself. We understand this. In an airplane, if the oxygen mask have to come down, the instructions are always you put the oxygen mask on yourself before you put it on anybody else. Because if you don't have any oxygen, you can't help other people. That is why. If we have people depending on us, then it is our responsibility every once in a while to check out. And that's it. If the only passage of scripture we had was Luke 22, 39? Yeah, 22:39. As he was wont to do, as was his custom. That's the only passage of scripture we would need to be like, hey, look, when's the last time you've checked out and gone off to rest, relax, and recharge? If you have to think about that, it's been too long. LaBeth, bless her heart, she wants to book another weekend in August or September. And if we got the money, go for it. All right. Well, folks, 35 minutes today. It's not a very long podcast, but that's all I've got. I hope that I hope that you weren't too put off by the long weekend. I hope that I can get back on track. I've got to narrate my article for today. I had some technical difficulties um, with a couple of pieces of equipment. Turned out all I had to do was just restart my computer, but I thought some really bad stuff was wrong. But that being said, um, we do we do what we can. I did have some technical difficulty this morning, which is why I didn't get my um, deal recorded. I'm just going to go to Instagram here and see if I'm live. I'm assuming I am, but I can't tell. I can't tell from this at all. Christianity Now, Understanding the Time. Oh well, maybe it's doing what it's supposed to do. Um, I can't tell it. Okay, broadcast started. Broadcast was okay. Good deal. Well, okay, so it is working. If you do want to watch us on Instagram, it's Understanding the Time at Christianity Is Now. I don't know. Let me check my captions here. I believe I've got it on the captions. Instagram, Understanding the Time. That's it. Well, if that's what's going to be happening, let me put a couple of things in the comment section. This is the merchandise store, and I'm kind of excited about it, quite frankly. I need to order some merchandise so I can have it, so I can showcase it for y'all. But then we also have Substack. And here is the latest article. This little stool is mine. I use it all the time to reach the things I couldn't and lots of things I shouldn't. And there is a Bible message there that you can apply to your everyday walk of life, which is just because one can do something does not mean one should. I remember a friend of mine. I remember how off-putting it was when he said it. I asked him, like, why are you doing that? And his response is, because I can. And I thought, what an absolutely terrible reason to do anything. Just because you can. That means you haven't thought 1 second beyond your own nose. Anyway, so I wrote an article. This little stool is mine. I use it all the time to reach the things I couldn't, lots of things I shouldn't. I had that little stool when I was a toddler. I kind of wish I had it now. But that's the wisdom and restraint. As Christians, we are often faced with choices that test not only our faith, but our understanding of what it means to live a life that honors God. So hopefully you'll like that. So those are in the comment sections. And that's all I've got today, folks. I'm going to get off of here a little bit early. Remember, if you want to listen to these on, if you want to listen to these podcasts on podcast format on a podcast platform, go to Podbean, Apple Podcast, Spotify, TuneIn Radio. You can go check out our content on Instagram. We put out shorts and memes and stuff like that. Also, Christianity Now streams on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe and share that. That really helps us out. And then remember, As far as monetary support, nearchurches@gmail.com, send a PayPal, or you can do a $5 a month at Substack, or you can do Patreon, www.patreon.com/Christianity Now. And that's all I've got, folks. Remember, recharge, relax, rest, rejuvenate. It's okay. You're not a bad person if you take a break. In fact, sometimes that screams virtue. That's all I've got here. God bless everyone. This has been Tony Brewer with Cogitations, powered by Christianity Now. And yeah, we'll catch you on the flip side.